right.
All right, EJ.
EJ Hassenfratz, everybody. iDesign.com.
Free beer if this crashes on me again. So I had something very nice that I wrote up just today, so I didn't memorize it, so forgive me, I'm actually reading this. But I'm going to start off with a question that I asked on Twitter. My mouth is big enough, I think. But I asked this question on Twitter last week. Did anyone vote in this, actually? If anyone? No? All right, cool. So I asked, what % of Cinema 4D out of all of the tools and the features do you think that you've actually used in your career so far? And you can see the results, a majority of people, and we had 420 votes, and being in Denver, that was ironic. Whoever that 20th vote was is great. Most people voted in the 10 to 20% range. So how many people here think they know about 10 to 20% of Cinema 4D at this point? And how many people think they know more than that? How many people think they know less than the 10%? Okay, a lot of honest people in here. So this over 50%, I think these people, unless they're Chad or Chris or David Ariev or the people that actually made the software, I think they're full of crap. I don't think you know over 50% of the software. But the thing is that 10 to 20% range is perfect because you only need to know as much about the software as you need to know to do your job. So how do you figure out what that job is? And how do you know what to learn? Like, especially if you're new to 3D, how do you even know where to begin? And how I figured out what that was by discovering through creating to find out what you enjoy doing and then having that dictate what you actually learn. So I thought I enjoyed making 3D sports logos and animating a bunch of 3D sports logos. And then I got to my 100th 3D sports ball logo, and I'm like, yeah, I think I'm done. I think I'm good on the animating 3D sports balls logos. So, of course, because my reel was completely filled with this stuff, that's all I got hired for. So I kind of had to take a step back and almost like reinvent myself. And I actually want to learn more about animating, and I took School of Motion, Animation Boot Camp. Anyone else take that? You should. If you want to get better at animating, it totally it changed my career, basically. So I decided, you know what? I need to learn to be a better animator because I kind of skipped over that step, learning After Effects. I was just into the shiny stuff. Went into 3D, used all the Brograph effectors, and kind of used that as a crutch and never actually learned how to animate for realsies. So what I started doing was animating inanimate objects and kind of breathing character and life into them. And I really, really enjoyed doing that. And then the next thing you know, I started putting eyeballs and mouth on inanimate objects. And then the rest is kind of, that's been my career and building on just animating inanimate objects and turning them into characters and getting into character animation. So, but that was a process of discovering what I enjoyed doing, what I enjoyed creating, and that wouldn't have happened without self-reflection and just experimentation. So discovering and learning what the sketch and tune render was, for example, totally changed my career, basically. That was really a game changer for me because it allowed me to be a 2D animator in an app that I was the most comfortable in, right? And we live in a full 3D world anyway, so I mean, you should be more comfortable working in that third dimension. And at the time, learning sketch and tune was very hard. I didn't have myself with all my tutorials out there teaching the subject. It was just basically the help manual with very technical descriptions. So I wouldn't have learned it without being curious and just kind of, pressing things on my phone. I wouldn't have learned it without being curious, taking the initiative, and pressing buttons and figuring out what the heck everything did by trial and error. So one thing I want you to think about is when you're working, how often are you working, you actually stop and think about, what's that thing mean? Or you just skip it over. Maybe be a little bit more present in, when you're working and not just kind of pressing buttons. Figuring out what is this sketch and tune thing and learning more and right-clicking and doing the show help. By the way, who used the show help? Everyone should be, you can right-click on almost anything in the interface and bring up this massive help menu that is probably some of the most comprehensive help menus that I've seen in any software ever. If you don't use it, you should be using it a lot more, especially if you're wanting to know more about something. So as a teacher, it's been super necessary for me to have a deep understanding in what I'm teaching. I can't just touch a button and press it and say, okay, we're doing this because reasons. You have to actually know what that does and the story behind it so you can actually teach it. So through pressing buttons, using the show help, and discovering new aspects of the software while creating. So it's the process of discovery and experimentation where you can really accelerate your learning. So I really encourage you to start pressing your buttons and start exploring the apps that you're in. So today, I'm going to share with you some of my holy crap, I wish I knew that a long time ago, quick tips, and hopefully you'll learn something new. And if you don't, I heard Brograph will give your money back. All of it. Right? Yeah, all of it. Yeah, every single penny you paid. So let me open up Cinema 4D, and we're waiting. If we had a Mac, this would have opened up by now. No. Oh, shots fired. I have a Mac. I'm still struggling. I'm still clinging to my trash can Mac Pro at home with my external GPU renderer, doing a little bit of Octane in there. Anyone else still, rocking the trash can Macs? Yes, my people. All right, live strong. What? I am the only one. Oh God. All right, so let's cross our fingers this does not crash. Let's go. I can do it all night long. Okay, let's see. All right, so let's kind of start easy peasy. So I got this little logo animation, right? Boing. And it's just animated with a couple plane effectors and stuff like that. And if I can turn on this delay effector, we add a nice little boingy boingy. But one thing I really like to do is push this even further by using one of my favorite deformers, the Jiggle deformer, to add more jiggliness to it. So we all know that deformers, you use them and apply them to objects by making them a child of that said object, and you'll notice that if I just turn this delay effector off, actually nothing is happening at all, right? So there's a little extra step that you need to do when working with a Jiggle deformer, something that adds some kind of simulation, and a MoText object, which is a generator object. So it's generating geometry. It's not actually recognized as polygons and all that fancy mumbo jumbo stuff. So there's one step we need to take so the Jiggle deformer actually recognizes the geometry of our MoText, okay? So the one thing that we have to do is going into our little helpful menu here and using the Swiss Army knife of Cinema 4D, which is the connect object. And what the connect object does, if you place an object as a child of it, basically connects the object together and makes it look like you just made it editable, and you can actually see and recognize the polygons and geometry on it. So now, if I hit play, the first thing you're going to see is that it's actually just totally, let me do this another way. Since I actually have a deformer on this, I'm just going to have this connect object reference it. So I'm going to place the MoText in the object, and you're going to see that everything is now in this connect object, and I'm just going to turn off this textures. And actually the cool thing about this is I can just drag and drop the textures back on the connect object, and even though I have the C1 and C2 cap selections, it actually still reads it, which is awesome. So now I can apply this Jiggle deformer to that connect, so it's basically like baked down into polygons, and now you're going to see a lot more stuff happening. And this looks pretty good. I can do the same thing with the delay effector, but the great thing about the Jiggle deformer is we can play around with this fall off. And this is when things can get really interesting. So if I choose like a linear fall off and have it orientated to, let's try the negative y, you're going to see that if I move this up, there we go, woo! So you can see that basically the fall off is controlling the strength of how much that jiggliness is being applied to our object. So basically, the way I have my fall off positioned is that there's no jiggle at the very bottom and there's a lot of jiggle happening at the very top. So we get this really nice boingy squash and stretch effect with no added keyframes whatsoever. So basically, we have the couple of keyframes for the plane effector. We can add this delay effector in too, so we not only get the bounce of the delay effector, but we also have that really nice squash and stretch coming from the Jiggle deformer. And of course, we can go into our Jiggle deformer and kind of bring the structural down, and that makes it more of an object with not so many springiness or pliability to it, so it's a little bit stiffer. And we can also just adjust the stiffness as well to give that a little bit more firmness and a little bit more springy. Maybe add some drag. Maybe it's like underwater boinginess. I don't know. But yeah, so Jiggle deformer with MoText, you can make some really cool 2D style text animation too as well if you want to just place materials with just straight up luminance in them as well. All right, so let's go to time tracks. All right, so here's a little bee. I painstakingly animated. Who knows about time remapping in After Effects, right? How many of you know that that actually exists inside of Cinema 4D? 1. All right, great. So everyone else, 2. Ah, you, that guy. Don't trust that guy. So let's say you made this cool bee animation for a client, and the client's like, this is really great, and I have absolutely no changes at all, which never happens. So let's say the client says, I love this animation. What I actually want to do is like when it's in like mid arc, like kind of flipping, doing a little flipsy doodle, let's have it kind of slow down like Matrix style and speed back up again. And you'd go to your client and be like, yes, I can absolutely do that. And then hang up the phone and punch a wall, because that's going to take a lot of work. But not anymore. But you don't have to tell your client that this is actually easy to do. How many people don't know Cinema 4D but want to learn it eventually? All right. Well, I have a course coming out soon, within the next few months, on School of Motion. That'll be really, really awesome for those of you who don't know Cinema 4D at all and want to learn it. So stay tuned for that. So let's go to our timeline. And here's all my keyframes, right? And like I said, it took me quite a while to get the timing right, and I got all these curves and stuff. And if I actually wanted to retime this, that would take a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a time track. And how you create a time track is kind of like adding sound to your project. And typically you use a null, and let me just rename this time track. And whatever, there's an extra little thing there. And what we can do is let's just set some keyframes on this null so it actually will show up in our timeline. So let me just set some dummy keyframes here. There's our time track. And now that it's in our timeline, let me just delete. Whoa, let's not do that. Let me go ahead and add a special track. So if you go to Create, Special Track, we have this time track. So this is one of those things where I'm sure if you've added sound before, you've went down to sound, but probably never even paid attention to any of the other things, like mass track. I have no idea what that is. Maybe I'll figure that out someday. But here's the time track, right? So now that we got our time there, let me just delete our position, because we don't need that anymore. And if you click on this, we can actually name this whatever we want. So I'll rename this B retime. All right, so that's the name of our actual time track. Now, here's something else that I'm very interested to see if anyone even noticed. If you click on any kind of track here, animation track, has anyone ever noticed what the heck this space is here at all? Has anyone ever noticed it before? So this is where that guy again, that shifty guy, this is where all the magic happens. So basically you select all of the animation tracks that you want to retime. So that's basically everything. So that's our position, rotation. I have a little bend deformer on the B as well. And basically we'll define the time track to control all of those tracks. So I'll just drag and drop that B retime time track into that little option there. And then what you'll see is we now have this. Let me move this guy up. what we now have is, if I hit play, we have this new curve that I can, right-click and change this to, an easy ease. And you can see that how it's slowing down at the beginning and end because of those curves. So now I can totally remap my animation to slow this down in that middle and do that kind of bullet time effect. So what I'm going to do is just kind of see where we're like in flip mode, and I'll just set a new keyframe. Well, I actually got that keyboard shortcut on PC, right? And like go to the end of where we want the like bullet time thing to end. So maybe right there. And then we'll just kind of stretch this out. So I'll make the whole time length of my animation longer. So maybe 180, something like that. Because basically we're adding those frames to slow it down in the middle. So we're going to add some more frames to our actual entire animation. So we'll just increase the length here. And we can just, maybe make these soft. Maybe flatten this out a little bit. Give every keyframe a little bit of love. Never just do straight up easy ease, because people have seen that way too many times. So let's play this again. You'll see, all right, we stretched out the middle of that animation, so we got whoa, dodging bullets, and there we go. And you can say, client, that took hours, pay me. But that's time track, so hopefully you now can use that. And again, you can add whatever kind of tracks. Maybe you just want to time track the position. Then all you'd have to do is just remove those time tracks from all those other tracks you don't want. So now the rotation won't be time tracked, but the position will. So you'll see it'll rotate, whoa, and do something like that. All right, time remapping. So let's go. Don't you freeze. Don't you do it. Okay. Let's go to desktop. Let's see. Okay. This is a fun one. This is one I just learned last year, and it was one of those things where I'm like, holy crap. Why didn't I know this a long time ago? So everyone knows regular old dynamics. You apply dynamics tag to an object. Here I have my good old Voronoi fracture applied to some mode text. And basically what I want to do is trigger this dynamics and not just have dynamics apply to it automatically. So what you would typically do is you would go into your collider tab here and go into, actually no, not your collider tab, your dynamics tag. And here you have that trigger option. And you can see that it's already set to immediate, so it just immediately is applied at frame 0. But we can change this to collision. So here's my sphere. But what we're going to do is make this to be allowed into the simulation, the dynamic simulation. So I'll apply a collider body to this awesome sphere. And what this will allow this sphere to do is if I move this, I can then collide into that. But you're going to see that as I'm moving it, you're actually seeing stuff being pushed out. I'm not actually triggering the dynamics, but not without the inertia of my sphere kind of blowing everything off, right? So what I want to do is actually just have this kind of pass through, maybe like a ghost, and kind of spook the crap out of the little dynamic pieces and make them move. And why I said ghost is because there's actually a thing called a ghost dynamic. Who's actually ever heard of this? One person. This will blow your mind. All right, so let's choose sphere. Okay, so our sphere, we're going to change this from dynamic to ghost. So it's not just a collider, it's now a ghost. All right, now watch what happens as I pass this through. It's not bumping into it, it's just triggering the dynamics because it's a spooky ghost. Ooh. You can see that it's actually like I can go whoa, 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 and it's not blasting things off, right? So the cool part is when you go into your, let me see, Command D and go into your dynamics and go to like your general and maybe just like, hey, gravity, get out of here. And then what happens is we make the spooky ghost come through and he's just like, whoa, things are just kind of floating into space, right? We're like, mo-text in space. Things are just kind of floating away. Things become even cooler though if you start adding things like particle effects, like our good friend the turbulence object. So what this will do is then once the dynamics is triggered, it'll not only trigger the dynamics, but turbulence will now be applied to our objects. So you can get this really cool delay effect or decay effect. You can have multiple spheres here and have multiple ghosts kind of triggering this stuff off. So really, really cool stuff using ghost dynamics. How long have I been blabbing for? You sick of me yet? I'll do one more. One more? They're not even paying attention. I can just talk all day. I'll do one more. Yeah. Let's do... so we all know with spline wraps, right? We have the rail spline. Who knows about rail splines? So you get more control over your splines, right? How many people knew that there was an option like that for a sweep object? 1, 2, 3. Okay. I didn't know about this until I started teaching or started recording my School of Motion Cinema 4D course. Because I've always noticed, like, what does this use rail direction and rail scale? I was like, what? Why is that? But typically, when you want to rotate an object along a sweep, you'd go in here in your little spline gizmo thing and hold control, yep, and then add a point and kind of make your adjustments this way, which is kind of, a pain. I think for something like this, it's doable, but once you get more complicated, you're kind of going to need to go into this show separate view and really get in there and make these fine-tuned little adjustments, and that just seems like a total pain in the butt talks. So what I'm going to do instead is make a rail. And how you do that is how the sweep object works is the first object's the profile spline, right? And the second object is that spline that you sweep that profile spline across. But did you know if we Control, click and drag, and this third spline just totally removes everything, right? But this is actually your rail. So think of like a roller coaster, right? Where we have two rails, and depending on how you adjust them, if I just move this forward, whoa, we got our rail spline here, boys and girls. And if we select both of our splines now, we can actually go into like our selection, our rectangular selection, and select these little points here and actually do that same kind of rotation effect, but do it with full control over just grabbing points on our spline. And I can then scale this if I'd want to make this, or even move this 1 point to make this skinnier or wider. And that's actually this rail scale option here, that if you click that on or off, you can actually, depending on how wide spaced the regular spline and the rail spline is, actually will add, some scale if you have the rail scale on. So you can see, something like that. So you can really have a lot more control. Apparently, I was told that this method was a pain in the butt for some people, and that's why they actually added these little gizmos down here. But I don't know. I think I actually enjoy using the actual rail better than the other two. So yeah, hopefully, who learned something new today? Everybody! No one gets their money back. All right. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and another round of applause for Matt and Dave for putting this all on. This is really great. Put a lot of money and effort into building this community, and it's really great. And I just started a meetup in Denver, and it's like nothing compared to this as far as production value.
Brograph.com, an online resource for learning Cinema 4D, After Effects, and other motion graphics tools specifically catered to help you prevail as a motion graphic designer.
What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial.
With tutorials, plugins, and now a podcast with tens of thousands of listeners worldwide.
Yeah, it's a great community to be part of.
We give you professional time-saving tips, industry news, interviews, shortcuts, and lessons that help keep you current in the world of motion design.
Go into HDR Studio, take the render settings, pick the HDR, put in a reflection, and gorgeous.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Our weekly long-form podcast will give you the latest news, help you in your file management, hardware configuration, and client relations. Learn about the latest render engines, modeling techniques, and workflow integration while staying entertained.
Real nice banana.
Ah, that's so funny. All right. I'm going to live forever.
Our Brograph talks are a chance to see the way industry leaders from around the globe are changing the face of motion design.
Sometimes you got to make stuff that you're not going to put on your reel, and I'm not here to judge.
The podcast and talks include people like Beeple, Barton Damer, Nick Campbell, Andrew Kramer, David Ariev, Chad Ashley, Paul Babb, EJ Hassenfratz, Mitch Myers, Chris Schmidt, Jules Urbach, Cornelius Dammert, David Brodeur, Andy Needham, Caitlin Kaju, Zubair Parker, Noseman, Ryan Bean, Casey Hupke, Nick Lyons, Sage, Joey Korenman, Jeremy Cox, Rick Barrett, John Dickinson, Matthias Omatola, Patrick Goski, Brandon Clements, Steve Teeple, Tom Glimpse, Patrick Longstream, Julia Simone, Devin Coe, Al Heck, and even Deadmau5.
You get that render done. Yeah, you better frame what?
Our Brograph breakdowns go behind the projects and give you an insight on what it's like to manage and maintain your own personal business or work for a large company. Join us for live sessions, check out our useful plugins, watch time-lapse projects, interact with us, and send us email questions and topic ideas. Or just hit the Rando Render button and do an imaginative daily that'll keep you on your toes.
Take all your dreams and let's do it!
Subscribe today and get automatic updates on the latest tutorials, tricks, tips, and inspiration brought to you by industry professionals Dave Koss and Matt Milstead.
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here.
Subscribe now to Brograph Tutorials.
It's pretty good, I guess.